Yeah, hi, and welcome to our FAB Friday today. My name is Lennart Hildebrandt. I was the research assistant for 3.5 years at the HSU, the Helmut Schmidt Universität, or the University of the Federal Armed Forces here in Hamburg. And during that time, I wrote my doctoral thesis, which I finished this year and which I would like to present today to you. And since April this year, I'm the managing director in a recycling company in Hamburg. What is the title of my dissertation or my doctoral thesis? It has a title, Open PPC, so Open Production Planning and Control. And it's all about the conception of a model for production planning and control for decentralized, networked, and open production sites. For the presentation, I'm going to take probably or roughly 30 minutes, and after that we can have a Q&A, and I'm looking forward to that. All right, let's start. And of course, we start with our agenda. And first, I want to talk about the recent events we had in the 2020s so far, then about the research need or the research needs, which are based on the events. Then I'm going to talk about the methodological framework, the requirements elicitation, the modeling, the modeling of the actual model of the Open PPC model. Then I'm going to go forward with a critical reflection and, of course, the outlook and the need for further research. Whenever you have questions, we could also start with some Q&A during the presentation, and if not, of course, after the presentation. All right, let's start with the events in the 2020s. And as you know, we had many disruptive events. For example, we had COVID, which already started in 2019. But affected us especially during 2020 and 2021. Of course, we have the Russian war in Ukraine, and we have, for example, the accident in the Suez Channel. And however, we had disruptive developments which have shown us the limits of today's globalization. And these events showed us that our current value creation is fragile. And that is a problem. And added to this, we have challenges such as climate crisis or mega trends. We see the mega trends here on the bottom left. We have, for example, the silver society, we have healthcare and everything like that, and also urbanization. And this leads, among other things to social rethinking and the rethinking of the movement of goods. And such things are possible, for example, through Fab City and open production sites. So we see there is a need for change, and that is probably or hopefully possible, as I said, if we produce in the production sites which are in a Fab City, because we are able to produce a product at the place of need in the right quality. We are able to produce goods that we really want and that people really want. And of course, the production is less vulnerable to these external events as we see them here or as we discussed them here, these disruptive events. And because of that, or because of the potential that I see with the production in the Fab City context, I was wondering myself, so because we have this potential, I was wondering, is it maybe not sufficiently exploited? And because of that, I made an integrative literature review to answer this question, because I wanted to know, are there PPC models in theory or in practice which we could use for the production in a Fab City? And the results from the integrative literature review are very clear, because we see that we have different PPC models for hardly distributed or hardly networked, but also for highly networked and highly distributed production sites. But they're all, or industries, but they're all closed or restricted. And that is a problem, because when we talk about Fab City, we want to have openness. We want to have the production sites open to participate for everyone. And what we see here is that we don't have PPC models, or we just have a few PPC models which are open to participate for everyone and which are highly networked and highly distributed. So there is a research need, because both in practice and in theory, we see that the PPC is indeed insufficient for decentralized, networked and open production sites. And because of that, I raised my research question, which is, how could a production planning and control model for decentralized, networked and open production sites be holistically designed using Hamburg as a case study? And how did I do that? How have I answered this research question? let's talk about the methodological framework. So that was or has been done in two major steps. According to the old VDI 2022-21 from 1993. On left side, we have a picture which shows it. It's unfortunately in German, but I'm going to explain it. So what we have first are our overall requirements, and our overall requirement for this dissertation was the local production and the value creation in our city or in a city or in our urban area. So the first step was from these overall requirements, the local production and the value creation, to more and more detail these requirements to receive detailed requirements, which are really, or which is, for example, content of users and operates from our open production site. So what I have done is I started to do inductively identified and elicited actual conditions as well as boundary conditions and the resulting requirements. This was the first step. And then in the second step, I started with the actual modeling. So I tried to match these elicited requirements with the Aachener PPC model, which is the most famous PPC model in the world. And I just wanted to know, is it possible to change the Aachener PPC model to have it or to use it for these elicited requirements? And as I said, this is the second step. So what I have done is on the basis of the Aachener PPC model and the requirements from the step one, I am I tried to combine them for detailed and partial models to form the overall model, das Gesamtmodell. And the overall model is, of course, the PPC model with all levels and tasks we need for the production planning and control in our Fab City environment. Maybe a quick look into the requirements elicitation. Of course, we had a main goal, and the main goal was to really elicitate the requirements for a PPC model in open production sites. And as a methodology, I had a research approach, which was the explorative and representative embedded single case study. And I used 9 different objects of analysis, which were open production workshops or open production sites in Hamburg. So in general, Fab Labs from the community, like the Fab City community, but also Fab Labs from universities. And I also used company Fab Labs and tried to analyze these company Fab Labs, which we have in Hamburg, which is very interesting. For the data collection, I used a mixed methods approach with 17 semi-structured expert interviews. So I've talked to operators, but also users of these Fab Labs about their requirements. And I also conducted open observation according to Yin. And for the evaluation and analysis, I used the so-called content analysis according to Kukatz. Here we see some stated requirements which I raised. So in total, it was possible to find or raise 8 main categories and 30 requirements. And of course, this is just an excerpt what we see here, but we see 3 different categories like communication, structure, and operability, and award of contracts. And these, according or part of the categories are, of course, the requirements. And when we talk about communication, one requirement was direct communication between users and customers via a central platform, some sort of chat or ticket, something like that. When we talk about the structure and the operability, then we had 2 requirements, which were standardized requests for order information, for example, dimensions and materials, maybe even the manufacturing process. And another requirement was the pre-selection of the suitable manufacturing processes. And when we talk about the award of contracts as a category, then we have also requirements. In this case, we have 4 requirements. For example, the matching function between a client and a user. So that has to be matched via a Kanban board. But we also have a fair distribution of orders between users, which is a very important requirement. but we also have the choice for users about acceptance of orders. So they don't want to get an order, they want to choose an order. And of course, we have the avoidance of duplication, because if we have duplicated inquiries, of course, that would be a problem for us, because then we have not enough capacity and it's not useful, because then we produce trash. All right, so then we had our requirements. And then was the question how to actual model the model with our elicited requirements. And for that, we have the second step, which we already discussed according to the VDI. And the overall goal was the identification of necessary changes for the existing or to the existing PPC model, and derive PPC model for open production sites. And for the methodology, I have choose this actually a three-step process. For example, but the first step is the model selection. So first I wanted to really select the model for production planning and control with a focus on networks, which I'm going to change. And as I already said, that was the Aachener PPS model. So during step one, during the model selection, I choose the Aachener PPS model because it's the world's most famous PPC model. Then we had the second step, or the second process, and that was the applicability analysis, because then I wanted to look if the raised requirements match with the chosen model. And for that, I used a house of quality. So I guess everybody knows a house of quality, unfortunately, again, in German, but we have like the market side with the what, and we have the process side with the how, and we have the relationships in the bottom of the house, or in the like in the ground floor. And it's important to match the what, I mean the requirements from the market side, with the how, with the processes from the process side. That's the house of quality. And that is what I did during the second step, during the applicability analysis. And then we have as the third step, the modeling of the PPC model. And that was based, of course, on the second step and the identified the requirements. All right. Now we have already talked a lot about the Aachener PPC model, and of course we should quickly look or check the Aachener PPC model, because as I already said, my whole modeling is based on the Aachener PPC model. I'm going to do that in very quick, because we see here the core activities or the core tasks of the Aachener PPC model. And as you can see here, we have actually three pillars. We have the network tasks as the first pillar, we have the core tasks as the second pillar, and we have cross-sectional tasks, which is not really a pillar, but it looks like the third pillar. And when we talk about the network tasks, then we have the network configuration, we have the network sales planning, the network needs planning. And when we talk about the actual core tasks, really the production planning and control core tasks, then of course we talk about the production program planning, we talk about the production requirements planning, and we talk about external procurement planning and control, and of course the in-house production planning and control, because we want to produce. When we talk about the cross-sectional tasks, then we have the order management, we have the inventory management and the controlling. And of course, as some sort of cross task, because it's necessary for the network tasks, the core tasks, and the cross-sectional tasks, we have the data management. And for the open PPC model, we still have the same structure, because we have the need for these two main tasks, the network task and the core task. And because of that, I'm going to show you the result of the matching from the requirements and the Aachener PPC model. So here are the results of the applicability analysis at network level. And on the network level, I can tell you that the Aachener PPC model is predominantly not applicable, because there are just too many changes which are necessary to fulfill the requirements. And when I say too many, then we talk about 17 significant changes. And to really fulfill the requirements, it was necessary to completely model 2 new tasks. And on the lower side here on the slide, we see an example of significant changes which had to be done. For example, it was important to have the planning and the management of machine functions and network capabilities instead of products, because in the Aachener PPC model is about products, but when we talk about the FAB City context, it would be better, or is better for us to talk in machine functions and network capabilities to really use this network in the FAB City context. Then we have network design with an equality of operators and users. We have a handling of production, which should be done locally by one user and not, so we don't want to have a make or buy analysis. Then it is important, or the significant changes, the development of a holistic platform with an equal effort for each user, and that is important. And it doesn't matter if the user is so actually the maker, so really the user of the phablet, or the customer, or the operator of a open production site. It should be, at least inside the user class, an equal effort to use this holistic platform. And of course, it is important to have a matching function between the customer and the user. I mean, between the customer and the maker, with some sort of Kanban board, so that they need to be matched. So we have the makers, and the makers are able to produce in the FAB City context, and we have the customers, anybody who needs a product, and it's important to match these 2 persons. All right, these are the results from the network level. And when we talk about the network level, then of course, according to the Aachener PPC model, we have a local level. And this is interesting because the Aachener PPC model is predominantly applicable at local level for contract or order manufacturers. However, we had 3 major or significant changes which were still necessary. And also 2 new tasks have to had to be modeled. And again, we see here an example of significant changes. So for example, a significant change is that it has to be possible to make a request to the whole network, not just to an operator. Then we have the verification of a request through a standardized request for order information. We have the modeling of a centralized and fair procurement with a user choice. We need to develop further types of procurement, in this case for the makers. And we need to eliminate the make or buy analysis, because we don't want to think about a make or buy analysis. We want to produce locally everything which we need. So there is no make or buy analysis. We're going to produce it locally at the FAB City here in Hamburg. And it is important to have no provision for customer anonymous orders and components. So everything we need to produce, and we're not producing to stock, because when we produce to stock, then we always produce for trash. Of course, not everything, but some parts. And we don't want to produce trash. We want to produce components which we really need. All right. These are the results from the local level. So now we have talked about the network level and the local level. Now we should talk about the Open PPC model. And before we go into detail in the Open PPC model, we can try to simplify it, or I'm going to show you the core, the three core phases about the Open PPC model. And these are actually 3 phases which are really, really necessary. So the first phase is that we have, the first phase is the inquiry and the quotation phase, which means that the customer submits an inquiry to the network, and the network automatically checks the inquiry for feasibility. And if the request is feasible, then it's possible to pull this request by a maker, and the maker is creating a quote for it. So this is the first phase, the inquiry and quotation phase. As the second phase, we have the production phase. So the maker chooses an open production site in this environment, in this FAB City. So any production site which is good for him. And of course, he can obtain his material from various sources. We're going to discuss this later. And then he, of course, manufactures the product. This is the second phase, the production phase. Then we have the third phase, the settlement phase, which means the maker receives the work from his customer. And of course, in return, the customer receives his product because he ordered the product and now he receives his product. The maker pays a part of his salary to the open production site because he used this facility. In addition, the maker and the open production site receive evaluation points by the central platform. Why do they receive evaluation points? We're going to discuss this a little bit later, but they do receive these evaluation points because if they would not, then it would be, or let's say it a little bit different. They receive these evaluation points because they need to reach a minimum score in a certain period of time to be still part of the network, because otherwise, if they do not reach this minimum score, then they are removed from the network, because in this case, they would obviously only profit from the network, but not give something to the network. So it is important to receive this minimum score to really check and to really have it done that the users and the open production sites provide something for the network and not just getting something or profit from the network. That's all about. All right. Now we're going a little bit more into the details, and of course we start here at the network level. So we're now going to check the actual processes of the Open PPC model. And as I said, we're going to start here at network level. And the network level is a so-called project network according to the Aachener PPC model. And the project network means that we have a high customer change influence. We have a production according to customer specifications. We have an engineer-to-order approach, and we have a multi-part product. And the network level actually contains or is made of 5 main tasks, as you can see on the left side, with 25 process steps and 25 documents. All right, let's check these tasks. With the first task, we have the N1, which is the network order planning. And that is, has the goal to derive the network, supplier, and functional structure for the whole network, for the whole Fab City PPC network. And what do we have here for implemented requirements? We have the planning functions instead of products. We already discussed it. Then we have a heterolike system with democratic inclusion of partners. That's the second implemented requirement. As the second task, we have the network configuration, which has the goal to check the inquiries and places them as orders on an open platform. And the open platform is a Kanban board. And we have the implement or as implemented requirements. We have an archive for previous projects, and we have a pre-check for the request by means of a sub-process based on the functions. And we talked about that, and now I'm going to go here a little bit more into the detail, because these functions or based on functions means that the inquiries are in a capability space with dimensions, and a distinction is made between the material type, the size of the request, and the manufacturing process. And of course, we have for the machines the same dimensions, and then we're going we're just checking if it's possible to match these machine capabilities with the dimensions of the inquiry. And if it's possible to connect them, then the product could be manufactured during or in our Fab City environment. And of course, as the last as the last implemented requirement, we have the placement of the request on our Kanban board. So, and then it's of course possible to get the increase from the Kanban board. As our third task here in the network or at the network level, we have the network needs information evaluation, which has the goal to solve problems and to trigger processes to improve the network. Because we have already talked about the functions, and of course we need to further develop our functions to provide a network which is capable to produce everything we need in our city, or which are or that the network is capable to produce everything our network or our city consumes, as it is part of the Fab City thinking until 2054, right? And we have implemented requirements. For example, we have the checking of rejected requests, because if an inquiry is rejected, then we should think about why was it rejected? Do we need to improve and develop or further develop our network? And we have, as an implemented requirement, the finding of solutions for individual problems or individual cases with starting control loops. Okay, then we have the fourth task, which is the network capacity and material management, which has the goal to represent all capacities and materials which we have in stock. And one implemented requirement here is, of course, the networking to the local level to really find out what is the situation about the capacities and the material stocks. So really to query machine capacities and material which is available in stocks. All right, the last task here at network level is the network partner evaluation. These are these evaluation points which we have already discussed. So we have the goal to allocate evaluation points to really measure the performance of our partners, but also our users, the makers, and the operators. And the implemented requirement here is a sub-process for assigning points on the basis of the lay time and complexity of the individual request or inquiry, which means we have our Kanban board, and as more complex an inquiry is, and as more it has lay time on the Kanban board, so it's obviously not easy, the more points you get. So it is possible to produce just a few complex products and receive a big amount of points, but it's also, of course, possible to produce many easy products and also receive the same amount of points. However, I have chosen that to really work on every inquiry. So there will be some makers which are specialized on the making of complex products, but other ones who will be specialized on building or manufacturing non-complex products. And with this approach, it's possible to produce everything. All right. So much to, or at the network level. Of course, when we have a network level, and you already know it, then of course we have the local level. And the local level is based on the contract manufacturer. The contract manufacturer is according to the morphological scheme for the description of order processing structures, which means we have an order processing which is initiated by customer orders. Then, of course, we have a product or a production on demand. So the production is demand-oriented and deterministic. And the core competence of the contract manufacturer lies in the development, construction, and assembly, according to the Aachener PPC model, at least. All right, let's check the processes at the local level. So as the first task, we have the offer processing, which has the goal to conduct a counseling interview and prepare a quotation. And of course, we have some implemented requirements, which is the consultation for customers depending on previous experience, and of course the interfacer to the Kanban board, because the makers need to have this interface to the Kanban board to prepare the quotation and work on the quotation. All right, then we have the second task, which is the order processing, and that order processing has the goal to for the project release and the elaborated order. And we have also implemented requirements, which is, for example, the storage in the archive for partner evaluation. So if you store a project in the Fab City archive, then you also receive evaluation points. This is also possible. Then we have the third task, which is the production requirements planning, or the name is production requirements planning. And as you probably know, the goal is here to derive necessary production requirements and procurement types. And of course, we have some implemented requirements, or basically one implemented requirement, which is the elimination of a make or buy analysis. Because I already told you, we have the approach to really locally produce and manufacture everything we consume. Because of that, we don't need a make or buy analysis. There is no choice. We want to produce it locally. Because of that, we don't need the make or buy analysis. All right, then we have the task A4 and A5 and A6, which are all about the external procurement planning and control. So A4, A5, A6 is about external procurement control. And of course, we have 3 different procurement options. And the goal here was to produce, or to have a good process, usable, or actually three good processes and 3 usable processes for the procurement of material for our manufacturing. And of course, we have an implemented requirement, which is the procurement, which should be possible through quotas and through the exchange between open production sites. Then we have the in-house production and planning and control, because so far we have planned a lot, but we didn't start with our manufacturing or our production. And that is task A7, which is the in-house production planning and control. And our goal here is, of course, the planning and control and the implementation of an in-house production in our open production sites, which is completely initiated by the makers. And the implemented requirement here is the access to an archive for lead time determination through previous projects, which has the potential to reduce the blocking of machines, because we better know how long our actual production should need or should take. And because of that, it's possible for us to less block the machines. All right, and then we have, as the last task, we have the A8, which is the order release and the inventory management. And as a goal, we have the handover and the acceptance of the product by the customer. So it's basically a quality task. And as an implemented requirement, we have the handling of quality assurance and warranty between user and customer. Warranty is also very important, because the warranty will not lie at or is not part of the network. It's part of the user, because the user is the manufacturer, and because of that point that he is the manufacturer, he has the warranty for the product. So if it's necessary to or let's say different, because of that, they have the handling between, or the quality assurance and the warranty, which is handled between the user and the customer, because the user is actually the manufacturer. In Germany, there's a word for it, or in German is a word for it, which is called Inverkehrbringer, which means that the user, the maker, is really, not reliable is the wrong word. He's really responsible for his product. This is what I want to say. All right, that was the PPC at the local level. When we use the PPC, of course, we have paradigm shifts with the use of the open PPC. And of course, we have paradigm shifts compared to, for example, the Aachener PPC model at the network level, but also at the local level. But let's start with the network level. On the network level, we have a hierarchical production approach, which means there is an equality between network partners, users, and representatives. And the representatives are democratically elected, which is not the case, for example, industry networks like VW has it. The people from the management board are not democratically elected. They are some sort of announced. Then we have the planning of machine functions, as we have already discussed it, in the whole network instead of products and sales. So we do not plan products and, of course, the sale of the product in our network. We plan the functions for the machine, so the machine functions. And of course, the system boundary are completely new, because now our system boundary is not a specific industry, but our system boundary is just the city, the Fab City. So we have our OPS, our open production sites, and these are some sort of production islands, and the workers are local makers who negotiate directly with the clients about the product and the price, of course, but of course they're also responsible for their products. So that is a big paradigm shift. Okay, that was the network level. Let's talk about the local level. When we talk about the local level, then we have as a major paradigm shift the possibility to order via contingent or via, we have contingents for materials, and it's possible to order via these contingents. So everybody has the right and the law to order through these contingents for the entire network. Then we have a very short planning horizon, and there are no client anonymous components, as we discussed it already, because we really want to produce locally, and we want to produce according to our orders, and because of that we don't have client anonymous components. So we have not mass customization, but we have really like single customization, really just one product after one product. And also a very big paradigm shift via or through OpenPPC is the fact that anyone anyone has the right and the law to become a worker, like our users and makers. They are all allowed to work in the whole network and for the whole network as makers. And of course, our production is dynamized and decentralized, which means we have no production control center. So the makers and the users are fully responsible for their product. They do plan it on their priority rules. And there's also an allocation via the point system or the evaluation point system, as we already discussed it. All right, these are our paradigm shifts when we talk about OpenPPC. Why do we need OpenPPC? We need OpenPPC because it provides added value for our three pillars it provides added value in the society, in the entrepreneurship pillar, and also in the universal or academic pillar. But let's start with the society. We have added value for the society because we have the advantage for users and operators to work through highly standardized processes and high utilization rates. Of course, we have added value because we have the advantage to for customers for falling product prices with higher data stock in our archives. So as I said, when we have a project and products, of course, we can store them in archives. And because of that, we have more and more data, and we can work with this data. And because of that, our development time will decrease and decrease, which is great. Because of that, our product prices will fall. That's great. And of course, we have an increase in the value of a product instead of a brand, because now we're again able to really produce these goods that people really want. So we are producing materials and products which really people need. And we're not producing brands. We're producing products which people need, and that is a high value of the product itself. And that is very interesting. Then, of course, we have the entrepreneurship, and we have added value through the OpenPPC because we have high innovation potential due to the large numbers of requests to network. That is very interesting. And of course, we have for SMEs and for large companies added value. When we talk about SMEs, we have the optimization of production. We have a better utilization of capacities, and we have shared knowledge and infrastructure. When we talk about large companies, then we have added value because of the optimization of supply chains. We have the shortening of planning horizons. We have added value because it is possible, or we have more and more democratization, which is great because we have a great access to suppliers and production sites. And it's also great for larger companies, as I said, not just mass customization, but really individualization, because we have the potential to increase customer satisfaction because we offer products that the people really want. All right. And of course, we have added value through OpenPPC in the academic pillar sector by the development and production of prototypes and demonstrators. I mean, that is clear because we already do that right away in our Fab Labs right today. And of course, we have rising or an increasing innovation output through our network or networking with companies, developers, and customers, which is, of course, interesting in the academic sector or pillar, but also interesting in the entrepreneurship sector or pillar. All right, now we should answer a question. And of course, I want to answer my research question, because when you think back, then I raised a research question, and that was, how can a production planning and control model for decentralized, networked, and open production sites be holistically designed using Hamburg as a case study? Yeah, how is it possible? So first of all, I can tell you that the model is based on the Aachener PPC model, but however, significant changes have been necessary. So it was not possible to just use the Aachener PPC model for our Fab City context. It's simply not possible. We need to, or it was very, very important to significantly change it. In total, there are 5 tasks on the network level and 8 tasks on the, or at the local level, as we see here on the left and on the right, these different tasks. Then OpenPPC offers considerably more links between the individual tasks, as you see it, for example, here and here. These are the links, not just links at the same level, but also, for example, here, links between the levels, and also here. So there's more communication between these different levels. Okay, OpenPPC provides provides a variety of paradigm shifts, as we already discussed them. And we have the blurring of the roles, and we have the user, the operator, and the customer. All right, let's continue with a critical reflection, because, however, OpenPPC is, of course, based on assumptions and, of course, based on limitations. The first one is maybe even the most important, because it is assumed that all network partners are equal. That's very important. And they really want to actively develop the network, because if they do not, the relevance and our production output will be low. And if so, of course, then OpenPPC does not have an output as we wanted. Then, second assumption or limitation, the implementation and validation of OpenPPC is pending, because the requirements, or not because, but the requirements and practice for implementation are pending. But however, the requirements originate from practice. As I said, they have been raised here in Hamburg in 9 different open production sites, and during semi-structured expert interviews with 17 operators and makers. Of course, OpenPPC is based on the widely validated Aachener PPC model, so it's really widely validated. And of course, it was not possible to validate OpenPPC because there is no theoretical comparison model for a theoretical validation. However, for the implementation and for the strengthening of the resilience, the focus on production should be increased, especially in community-operated open production sites, because right now they often have the focus on more like tinkering and really try to innovate. But of course, we need to have a focus later on the actual production, because we need to produce in Fab City. And the last one is the request structure, which is designed as a market pull. And that might be a problem, or could be a problem, because to really promote innovations, we need a market push. And we are going to initiate that through our archives in the future, which is important to, as I said, to really promote innovations. All right, let's finish with our outlook for the implementation and the need for further research. Let's start different. What is the contribution of the work? I mean, of my dissertation. It is creating essential foundations for PPC and regional networks with open production sites. And we have 2 pillars which are important. We have the practical implementation, and we have now the need for further research. For the practical implementation, it will be necessary and also very, very, very important to start a test implementation in an existing production network. And of course, Fab City Hamburg is appropriate for that, because I raised the requirements here in the Fab City. So the OpenPPC model will be very, very good, or it fits very, very good in the Fab City Hamburg context. During the implementation, we should take focus on technical interfaces, or the development of technical interfaces, and also the UI development, because right now we don't have any UI because it's a concept or a model. All right, and as I said, we have a further need for research, because what we want to do in the future, or what do we need to do in the future, is the identification and evaluation of the impact of OpenPPC on some different things. For example, the productivity, or also the efficiency, and last but not least, of course, the profitability of the production network. So it's very important to really see, is it also from an economic perspective good to use OpenPPC? And of course, we have further need for research or in the field of new business models. So it will be, or it is important for the future to develop new business models based on open production, planning and control, with the discussed and associated paradigm shifts. All right, of course, some references, just nice to know. Then I would say thank you so much. For contact options, please write me an email to lennart.hildebrandt@hsu-hh.de. As I said, I'm not a research assistant anymore, but however, I do have this email account, and I use it, of course. So whenever you want to contact me, feel free and please go ahead.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot.